Hi, welcome to my live. I know nobody's here yet, but as people come on, um, today's topic is toxic relationship PTSD. And I am going to review with you what is it, the symptoms and the signs that you have experienced a toxic relationship or in one now, and what tips and strategies. I'm going to teach you some things that you could do to either leave the relationship or help you feel better, or um, see if it's possible for you to actually improve the relationship. Not you, but the way I look at it is demanding um, that the other person not be so toxic and possibly get help. So, welcome. And there's nobody here right now, but I'm pretty sure people are going to come. So I'm going to start. So what is a toxic relationship? Well, a toxic relationship is a relationship that it's an intimate romantic relationship with someone else, whether it's the opposite sex or same sex, um, or gender neutral, or gender fluid, as they say. Um, or in multiple, depends if you believe in a monogamous relationship or not. But either way, you've decided to be in a relationship with someone, and it's intimate, is romantic, it's based off of commitment and expectations. So what makes it toxic is that the relationship is damaging to you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, um, not necessarily physically. This is the mental, psychological, emotional part of the relationship that's damaging. It's defined, some of the qualities that define a toxic relationship is fear, submission, domination, inequality, deception, manipulation. How do you know you're in a toxic relationship? Well, I'm gonna I'm gonna share with you right now. And if you have any questions throughout this live, just please ask questions, make comments. Also, what I would say is that if you want to talk to me private, you could send me an inbox message. But my name is Kaisha, and I'm doing real talk on toxic relationship PTSD. There are at least 27 red flags that I'm going to share with you that determine whether or not you are in a toxic relationship right now or have been in the past. And so, what are these 27 red flags? One is you feel like you're walking on eggshells. So you find yourself always having to be very careful what you say, what you do around the person, in fear that you upset them. Two, you can't speak freely. So if you don't like something, you can't say it. You can't share your thoughts and feelings. Let's say you're a very emotional person. You're afraid to share your emotions or even tell them how you're feeling, or that you need them to listen to you because you're fearful that there's going to be some type of repercussion. Number three, red flag. It's always about them. So your relationship is always about pleasing the other person, listening to them, upholding them. You never get it back. So it's always about them. It doesn't even matter if you have something going on that's important. They are not interested or not there for you. Number four, red flag, abandoning values. You compromise your own values, your own interests, your own friendships, your own family, just to keep the relationship. And I see this a lot in domestically abusive relationships and toxic relationships, where you give up everybody and everything, your own goals, your own career, just to try to make the other person happy. Even like going out with your friends, you give it up just to make the other person happy. That is a red flag. You're in a toxic relationship. And as I said when I started, by the end of this live, I'm going to explain to you strategies, things you can do to really be helpful in either changing that toxic relationship so it becomes healthy, or getting out of that toxic relationship. Or if it was an ex-toxic relationship, how do you not continue in that cycle of dating the same type of person, which we'll talk about a little bit later. The 5th red flag that you're in a toxic relationship or have been, feeling drained and depressed. So especially when your partner is around you. That's the fifth red flag. 6th red flag, you play the role of the parent or therapist for your partner. You're always trying to help them resolve their problems. You're always trying to tell them what to do, how to do it, calling their job for them, making all their doctor's appointments. Now, some of that is normal and some of that is healthy in a relationship when you're being supportive and encouraging, obviously. But what makes it toxic is that it's always about the other person and they never do anything for you. So while you end up feeling like you're their parent or their therapist. The 7th red flag is being made fun of. That your partner always is highlighting your flaws and sensitivities and is like passive aggressive, especially around other people, around his friends and his family, and treating you less than, like you're a servant, or name calling or insulting you. That's number 7. Number 8, red flag, being taken advantage of. So your partner takes advantage of you financially, emotionally, mentally, sexually, even when you're not feeling good. It's kind of like you feel obligated to please them. Even if your money is really tight, you feel obligated to figure out how to borrow money just to help them, even though it's their bill, not yours, and their financial responsibility, that you go out of your way. Now, some of that is healthy in a relationship, to be supportive and encouraging, like I said, and I'm going to keep repeating it because it's important that you know the difference. Some of these things you will do is when it's in excess, is when the other person actually makes it always about them and their needs and not about yours. Number 9, always agreeing with them. You always feel that you're obligated to agree with them because as soon as you don't, there's a negative consequence to you. Number 10, constant drama. You always feel a sense of endangerment around them as things are chaotic. Your anxiety is raised. You feel, again, like number 1, walking on eggshells. But it's constant drama. Number 11, strict roles. You feel like you have to play a role, and even if you dare to change, or your whole relationship, you feel like your whole relationship is gonna fall apart, and so you feel like you have to do things a certain type of way in order to keep your partner happy. Number 12, red flag that you're in a toxic relationship. They're jealous of your success. Instead of celebrating your triumphs, your partner feels compelled to drag you down, to criticize you, to minimize your success, make you feel like you didn't really accomplish anything, change the subject, make it about them. Again, number 13, red flag that you're in a toxic relationship, brings out the worst in you. Instead of helping you be the best version of yourself, you actually become a more self-destructive individual. Like, become more introverted, isolated, not wanting to hang out with your friends, depressed or angry or moody, or quit things, and like you said, goals for yourself, and your partner makes you feel so bad about even doing things for yourself that you decide to quit and you self-sabotage. So they bring out the worst in you. That's another red flag. 14th red flag, regressing instead of progressing. So on a personal level, you move backwards instead of forwards, and your self-growth stagnates around your partner. So you kind of not plateau, but you actually step backwards. And that could be financially, emotionally, spiritually. So you regress, basically. Number 15, no support. You can't turn to each other for emotional and mental support in times of need. You definitely can't turn to your partner when you're in a toxic relationship because they don't have time to support you. They're really focused on themselves and their needs. The 16th red flag, they're unreliable. You can't trust your partner to offer financial support, lend a helping hand, or even turn up for appointments that you said were important and commitments you asked them to be a part of. So unreliable. Number 17, deception, suspicion, and paranoia. There is a lack of truthfulness in your relationship, and you may have caught your partner in many lies. So that's another red flag, and go with your gut. Our gut usually is right. Our gut tells us if something's going on. Number 18. Now, again, these are just red flags for you to know or identify whether or not you're in a toxic relationship now or you were in the past. Number 18, self-absorption. They are wound up in their own problems and goals and desires and things they want to do, that there is no meeting point where you guys are on mutual ground or connecting with each other or on the same page. Number 19, contempt. There is a festering anger in your relationship. There's a lot of sarcasm, a lot of negative communication, condescending tones of voice, curled lips, eye rolling, body language, insults and name calling constantly. Number 20, disrespecting boundaries. You struggle to maintain clear physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual boundaries, and your partner may enjoy overstepping them. So you in a relationship, in every relationship, you have boundaries, whether it's your partner, intimate partner, family, friends. You create boundaries and expectations. And what happens is, in a toxic relationship, your partner ends up disrespecting those boundaries or crossing them, and it's on purpose or intentional. Number 21, submission/domination. There are issues of control in your relationship, and one person will enjoy constantly being in control or demanding to be dominant, including playing emotional and psychological games. And that's usually the partner that is toxic, that they want to play games in order to be in control and dominate the relationship and kind of manipulate you into doing things with the way they want you to do things. Number 22, nonstop obstacles. All relationships go through bumpy roads, every single relationship. Examples are, look at, who would have thought Jay-Z and Beyonce had issues in their relationship, right? So every relationship has obstacles. But in your relationship, if you're in a toxic relationship, it's never ending. It's always something going on, constantly. Number 23, feeling unworthy. Your self-worth is low. You feel worthless around your partner. You feel like you never can make them happy. You feel like that you can never please them, but you still keep trying. And we're going to talk about how it becomes traumatic. So this is just red flags is what I'm reviewing right now. And then we're going to talk about, what actually happens to you. Number 24, keeping count of wrongdoings. So instead of moving forward, because people make mistakes. As individuals, we make mistakes. So in a relationship, of course, we make mistakes. And we do things that are wrong. But in a toxic relationship, the other partner is constantly keeping track of everything you do wrong. Even if it's you burned the bacon this morning, or you didn't make me coffee, or you forgot to close the door or something. It's always being brought up, and it makes you feel worse and worse about yourself. Number 25, lack of self-responsibility. Your partner doesn't take responsibility for their mistakes or their happiness. So in a toxic relationship, the other person will constantly blame you and not take ownership and responsibility for the things that they do wrong in the relationship. Only 2 more red flags. Number 26, justifying bad behavior. You find yourself trying to excuse or justify the selfish, immature, nasty behavior that your partner displays, especially to your friends and your family. No, he's not, he's just playing around, or no, he's just in a bad mood because he had something happen at work. Don't pay him no mind in his attitude. You're justifying his bad behavior. No, he didn't really cheat on me. He was just talking to someone. That is justifying bad behavior. And the last one, but not least, there are a lot more, but these are the main 27 red flags. And this is being recorded, so it will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, Real Talk with Kaisha, once it downloads tonight. The last 27th red flag is unequal division of labor. So you feel like you have to do everything, all the emotional work in the relationship, while your partner is rude, cold, unreliable. You have to try to resolve all the conflict. You're the one that has to be humble and feel like you have to make everything right and fix the problems between you. So that's the 27th red flag. Any questions so far about the red flags that you're in a toxic relationship or you have been in the past? No questions? Okay, we'll keep moving. Again, questions, comments, please mention it in the comments there. There are many reasons why a relationship becomes toxic. And 4 common causes of toxic relationship is poor communication and personal boundaries, emotional or mental immaturity, childhood wounds and traumas that we bring into our relationships, and narcissism and sociopathy. Now, sociopathic behavior. So the first three you can actually work through, and with professional help and other help, which I'll explain to you before we end, you can actually turn it into a healthy relationship. The last one is more difficult. Narcissism and sociopathic behaviors. You may want to make a decision for yourself whether you leave the relationship or not. But the first 3, there are poor communication, personal boundaries, emotional or mental immaturity, childhood wounds and traumas. Those you can actually work on turning the relationship into a healthy relationship. Now, there is a toxic relationship quiz you can take if you wanted to really figure out whether your relationship is or not. Anybody wants the quiz, they can let me know. It's only 11 questions that you would ask yourself. Now, so I talked about the red flags. So then what happens then? You're in a toxic relationship. What does it do to you? Obviously, it will cause you both some feelings of anxiety, and it will cause you some feelings of depression. Short-term effects and long-term effects. So the short-term effects, you might feel fearful or anxious, hopeless or depressed, confused at times. You might feel shame. You might blame yourself. It could definitely take an emotional toll on you, which results in behavioral and physical side effects. Some of these may be difficulty in concentrating and focusing, moodiness, physical like tension. When we're in emotional distress or emotional dysregulation, it can cause us to have physical symptoms, including like muscle tenseness. You know how you may wake up and your neck hurts, is tight, or you pulled a muscle. Some of that may come sometimes from high levels of stress. You can have nightmares. You can have racing heartbeat. So those are all short-term effects of being in a toxic relationship. Longer-term effects is you can have chronic physical pain. You could have continuous repetitive cycle of being in unhealthy relationships. You could have really high anxiety where you have panic attacks, anxiety attacks. You could have insomnia or oversleeping, always sleeping, social withdrawal, or loneliness. So these are just examples of what can happen if you're in a toxic relationship. It does cause PTSD. And I have written 2 books, and my belief and opinion, professional opinion, is that PTSD actually causes both feelings of anxiety and depression because it's the way that you're managing your experiences that were traumatic. So, um, things like angry outbursts, easily startled, paranoia, negative thoughts, flashbacks. These are just some symptoms that are caused by PTSD and especially toxic relationships, because we're speaking of that specifically. So, another thing is, let's talk about flashbacks. It can cause flashbacks. And one of the big things about flashbacks is it's usually triggered by one of your senses or is triggered. So for instance, there are 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. When you have PTSD, those senses can be heightened just by a trigger of a smell. You may have a flashback, like a specific scent that is tied to that trauma or that relationship or that person or a place you went to. You smell or sound, that can cause a flashback. So that's why there's things that you can do to really calm down your senses in order for you to go through your process of healing. Another thing is, how do you break the pattern of dating the same type of person over and over? Because that's a symptom of toxic relationship PTSD too, is repetition. So repeating the same pattern, of dating the same person over and over. How do you break that? One way is you have to go through the process of identifying what type of person is it that you continuously are attracted to, and then you stop dating and you really work on your own self-healing, and you really work on building your confidence and really learning yourself to know what you need and want in life and in a relationship. And a lot of times you can do that on your own and go through your own self journey. And there are plenty of amazing books out there. But if you can't, I mean, you can also seek professional help by getting a life coach or a therapist. Obviously, I mean, I'm a therapist, but a licensed therapist, which I always fail to mention. But um, you have to break the pattern. If you do not break the pattern, you will continuously date the same type of person over and over. Other people turn to some unhealthier ways to really cope with being in a toxic relationship, being unhappy, and or having trauma. Self-medication is one of them. And everybody always talks about self-medicating is okay, alcohol and drugs. But what they don't talk about is overeating is another way that you're self-medicating and coping in an unhealthy way. So like overindulging in insomnia cookies or ice cream constantly. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having either one either, but when you're overindulging, so you become super depressed and you just gorge and eat 2 buckets of ice cream, which and you continuously do that, that is a sign that you are self-medicating. Shopping, everybody talks about retail therapy, which is helpful at times, but not at the expense of you paying your bills or being responsible. So you have to be careful because you can overshop and really put yourself in a worse situation. Gambling is another one, but that's also one that people talk about. The other unhealthy coping that people do is sex, having multiple partners. Unless that's an intentional choice, I would, if you're having sex with multiple partners, I would caution you to identify why. If it's what you want, then that's fine. But if it's a result of you feeling bad about yourself because you have PTSD from an unhealthy toxic relationship and you're trying to make yourself feel better, you're gonna want to try to figure out a more healthier way to handle and cope with your feelings of anxiety, depression. Um, the other thing is there are people who are in toxic relationships who come out of them and don't want to date anybody. So as soon as they meet any new person, they self-sabotage. So the first sign of a problem, they just sabotage the relationship. They sabotage things that they're working towards, um, and they keep themselves in this kind of like plateau of unhappiness. So that's another symptom. Another unhealthy thing is that you become obsessive in your thoughts and constantly going on the other person's social media and checking out what they're doing, what they're not doing, even if they're an ex or, they're like not in another relationship. You're still constantly looking, or you're not with them anymore. And you could be in another relationship still looking at your ex's um, social media. So be careful. Sometimes we have to. So what do? Sometimes when we get in this obsessive thought process or behavior or unhealthy coping, we have to stop our own selves. And sometimes you have to put things in place so you kind of like block yourself from making these bad decisions. So, for instance, removing them from your social media, blocking them from your phone, making sure you don't have access to them is actually better. You have to stop yourself from going through it. So what can you do? You have these. So your choices are, if you're in a toxic relationship or you have been in the past. So your choices are, if you're in a toxic relationship now, do you stay in the relationship, one, or do you leave the relationship, right? And it really would depend. If you identify that it is toxic, then you could figure out, is it one of the four? Is it that the other person's immature? Or is it that you didn't communicate your boundaries and expectations? That's a big one that happens a lot, is that there's this unspoken expectation that's not shared, and then when the other person's not meeting it constantly, it becomes unhealthy. So with those, there's easy ways for you to like deal with it, where you sit down and you actually express and communicate your expectations and the boundaries in your relationship. It sounds kind of like you would sit down and actually go through, okay, so what are we going to do? What do you want me to do if I go out? What do you want me to do if I, want to go shopping or want to go on vacation or whatever? So you have to express your needs, expectations, and have boundaries. Now, if you have been in a toxic relationship in the past and you want to avoid getting in one in the future, I did mention that you can work on your own self-healing. And a lot of people go through life not working on that, not working on self-healing. Instead, they really focus on just survival. And I talk about that in my book, Navigating Trauma, is that we go through life functioning in survival because there's things we have to do. So we have to get up and go to work. If we have kids, we have to take care of our kids. If we're, a financial provider for our family, we have to do what we have to do to take care of our family. So there is survival mode that we're used to functioning in. And the problem is that once you get into survival mode, you can function. There's people who go through their whole life surviving. The problem is that, are you really happy? And you will have moments of happiness. But in order for you to have enjoyment and happiness in a different way, you have to really work on healing. And I mean, some of you may be very spiritual or religious, and healing is different for people, but I'm talking about emotional, psychological, mental healing. I'm not talking about any of the other types. So tips to keep in mind that is very helpful in order for you to get to a good place even if you don't make a decision, let's say you stay in a relationship because you've been with the person for a long time and you don't want to make a decision. So the first thing I suggest always is that you work on yourself. So working on yourself is always going to be helpful in you then standing up and advocating for yourself and demanding respect or putting boundaries where they need to be. So one thing you could do is whenever your partner is acting negative, sarcastic, selfish, give them space and do things for yourself. Work on you. Um, because the reality is that if your partner's not going to make you a priority and they make things all about them within that toxic relationship, then you need to make things about you and focus on your needs and them being met. So that's what I would tell you. Number two, talk about it. Talk about what you're feeling and what your thoughts are. You try and attempt to do it with your partner, but let's say that doesn't work. Okay, you still need to have that communication and feel better about what you're going through. So I always suggest that people create an emotional support system, which is different people in your life that can be supportive to you. Now, you're not, I repeat, you're not going to tell all those people your business. That's not what I'm saying. You probably will have one person that you really trust that you would actually share the details of what's going on with your relationship, or it would be your therapist, truthfully, because we are obligated to confidentiality and not sharing your information. But you would have an emotional support system for specific needs that you have. Like, for instance, one great strategy is when you're feeling really bad and low, or you could use someone as a way for you to distract yourself by you helping them, because it always makes us feel better when we help somebody else, truthfully. Number two, I would say, is that you have a friend. We all have a friend. Like, I don't know if you've seen Why Did I Get Married, but Angela from Why Did I Get Married, we all have one friend that always has some drama or conflict or something crazy going on in their lives. So sometimes we need emotional support by distracting ourselves, by listening to other people's drama. It's just, it kind of breaks the monotony of kind of like what we have going on in our mind. That specifically helps when we have very high anxiety. It helps us distract our thoughts and disrupt our thoughts. So, but you will have the trustworthy friend that you could communicate your information to. Another tip or strategy is respect boundaries. So even if your partner doesn't want to respect the boundaries you're trying to place in the relationship, you respect the boundaries. Anybody that knows me, I always say, do not compromise who you are. If you are a kind person, continue to be kind. Even if the other person takes advantage of you, just learn the lesson and don't don't do things for them. But if you want to buy somebody something, buy them something, even if they're not appreciative of it, because it's about what you want to do, not them. Keep that in mind. Don't ever change who you are because of other people, because then you're allowing them to influence you, and that never feels good. So one thing is learning about the other person's trigger points, so, and avoid those behaviors. So let's say your partner hates something specifically, and if it happens, then they're going to be very angry. Okay, so you can avoid it, but at the same time ask yourself, is it compromising what you want? So for instance, let's say your partner doesn't want you to go out with a specific friend. This happens. If they don't want you to go out with a specific friend, they may try to control you by trying to force you not to go out with that friend. So one suggestion is that, okay, so maybe go out with that friend and don't say anything to your partner about it, Or go out with that friend and another friend, so then it's not only that friend. The problem is you have to determine whether is your partner trying to control you, or does your partner have valid reasons for not wanting you to hang out with your friend. It's really sticky, because you try to respect the relationship, but you also have to identify whether or not it's toxic, what's going on or not. Now, I gave you the 27 red flags in the beginning, so you should be able to tell if what your partner is doing or saying is actually toxic or not. So, another strategy or tip is you could, I know some people, mental health and therapy still has stigma attached to it. And I know that not many people, it's needed, absolutely. And if you find the right therapist, you're going to be great. But you could get couples therapy. If you're in a toxic relationship, or you're in a situation that you used to be in a toxic relationship and you're actually starting in a new relationship and trying to make sure that it doesn't repeat itself, you can get into couples therapy, relationship therapy. There are some amazing relationship therapists out there that are trained specifically to help people have healthy relationships. So, that's, if you can get past the stigma and you're open to it, try it. What I would say is you should try something before judging it, because you never know. Now, I know some people have gone through therapy before and they had a very unhappy experience, I'm going to call it. But that may or may not be you. So what's important is that you should try it before judging it. Okay. Any questions or anything yet? Nope. Okay. So what are other things that you can do? So we talked about the emotional support system. Another thing is set goals for yourself. Set goals for yourself of things you want to achieve, because you always feel better when you accomplish things. So then it's not only people forget that you are an individual person within a relationship. You still should be living your own life. There's the life of the couple or the relationship. Then there's the life of family unit. Then there's the individual person life. And you still have goals that you want to accomplish. So remember that, don't forget yourself within a relationship. Sometimes we sacrifice for everybody else and we forget to take care of ourselves. So everybody knows I talk about self-care all the time. And sometimes it's too much to plan these big goals. I'm going to go back to college and become a doctor or a lawyer. That might be too big. So start small. I always say small accomplishment make you feel good. Like say, okay, I'm going to start exercising. Everybody starts the new year saying they're going to exercise. It's now February 6th. I can almost guarantee you everybody who was out gung-ho is stopped or whatever. Me and my husband were just talking about that yesterday. But start small. Say I'm going to exercise 1 day a week, or I'm going to do 5 minutes every day. So start with a realistic, achievable goal that you can accomplish. But set some goals for yourself. Things that make you happy. Everybody always talks about, a healthy diet, but not everybody's the same. What I'm going to tell you is that, okay, so everybody says, oh, you should eat healthy, eat a salad. Okay. Salads are not good for everybody. And everybody's body and makeup is different. So you never know, like, what is good for one person is not good for another. And too much of anything is never good. So too much good either is not good. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Okay, so You guys are really quiet today, but that's all right. So let's say you tried everything. You went to couples therapy. You identify you're in a toxic relationship. You went to couples therapy. You attempted to set boundaries and expectations. You attempted to really work on the relationship. And let's say you come to a point that you don't want to save the relationship. So there's 2 points. One is save the relationship. 7 things you could do for saving the relationship. Go to relationship counseling, couples therapy. Learn and practice effective communication skills. Learn and practice the art of active listening. Find mutual interests and passions within the relationship that you could do together and do your own. 5 is make space for regular intimacy and affection, because people forget that, believe it or not, that's really important in a relationship. Intimacy, affection is not just only sex. It's intimacy and affection is important for women and men, both. You want to feel that your partner desires you, that they find you beautiful or handsome or attractive, that they actually love being around you. And little things like you're washing dishes and they come behind you and give you a kiss on the neck or whatever. Those are examples. 6 is practice individual things that you like, whether it's you want to do mindfulness or yoga, or whether you like doing cardio, kickboxing, or HIIT program or whatever, or you want to do movie night once a month. You need to practice something that is regularly done within your relationship. And the last one, the most important one, is set clear boundaries with your partner that you agree on. I was discussing with someone the other day about compromise. And a lot of people talk about compromise in a way where couples and relationships should compromise. It's a compromise in a relationship. I don't agree with that, because compromising, that means one person wins and one person loses. And if somebody loses in that, it's never going to feel good. What I say instead of compromise is that you should negotiate in your relationship. Negotiate like, okay, I'm going to do this today because you want to do this, but tomorrow we're going to do what I want to do. So both of you win, instead of compromising where one person gets what they want, the other person gets nothing. So I would suggest that in creating boundaries, clear boundaries, that you negotiate what they are. Back to the scenario about friends. If your partner doesn't like one of your friends or family members, that's where negotiation has to take place, because it depends really on how important that person is in your life and whether or not you really want to advocate for you remaining in that friendship or relationship. Now, so that's 7 ways to save the relationship. Now, let's say you've done that and you're like, forget it. I don't want to be in this relationship no more. How do you end a toxic relationship? Now, that is very difficult, and I'm going to try to give you kind of a summary. But the truth is, this is a deeper conversation, because toxic relationships cause trauma, and it is considered domestic violence. It's emotionally abusive being in a toxic relationship. So how do you end it is not as simple as possible. It's there are strategies and there are tips, and I'm going to share them with you, but a full disclaimer is that it's not as simple as these 7 tips that I'm going to give you and strategies. 1, how to end your relationship. You notice denial. So if you are questioning yourself constantly, and you distrust yourself, you don't trust yourself, you know the person is gaslighting you. And gaslighting you is like the person is constantly turning things back on you. So for instance, you're complaining about something that they did, and your partner ends up making you feel like you didn't know what you were talking about. That's gaslighting. That's one example of gaslighting. There's more, but today's not about gaslighting. Today is about toxic relationships, which includes that. Trust your instincts. So notice that you really, it's time to end the relationship. You know when it's time. We all know. We avoid it, but we all know. Number two, don't fall for the person's manipulation, because your toxic partner senses that you're going to leave. It's like they know that you want to end the relationship, and they may try to do everything to make you feel good, and it tricks you into you staying. So don't fall for the manipulation. Number three, you should have a support person, at least one support person that knows what's going on. It could be a friend or a family, and it has to be somebody you can trust to help you leave the relationship. It could be a therapist, because the therapist will help you kind of come up with an actual plan that's going to be helpful for you. Number four, plan an escape route. So like get everything in order. Like make sure you have all your important documents, like your license, your passport, anything important, paperwork for your bank account, everything. Make sure that, when you're in a relationship for a long time, everything becomes together. So everything's under your name or their name. So make sure that everything's separate. Make sure that you take your things with you, cell phone plans, like bank accounts. So you have to make a plan, so you don't lose out on anything. You also know where you're going to go. So that's a part of the plan. Where are you going to go? And when are you going to go? So that's number four. You plan the escape route. Number five, think about your life 5 years from now. If you're struggling to get motivated to leave the relationship, think about what would your life be 5 years from now. Could you see yourself still with that person, even though they emotionally and mentally abuse you? So that's what you would ask yourself. And that alone will give you the motivation to want to leave. Number six, create a goal to work towards. So like, I want to leave this relationship so then I can then go back to school, and go move to another state. I mean, set goals for yourself. Create goals you can work towards. And number seven, use positive things to make you feel better and excited about you ending the relationship and beginning the relationship with yourself. So when you end a relationship with someone else, it's not only you're ending the relationship with someone else, you're also beginning a new relationship with yourself. So that's what you could refocus your mind on, you rebuilding the relationship with yourself. It's not that you're not loving the person anymore, it's that you're loving yourself more. It's not that you're choosing not to be with them, it's that you're choosing to do things for yourself and to be with yourself. And so one thing you do choose is using like empowering affirmations, and there's a lot of good songs. Music is very helpful in helping you feel better in life, so music is definitely a strategy. Another thing you can do is like, you know focus on goals that you want to achieve. If you're spiritual or religious, get more involved in your spirituality or religion. If you love your job and what you do, continue to set goals for yourself within that job or that career, and you can move towards accomplishing those things. I mean, in the end, you have to embrace starting again. If you decide to leave a toxic relationship, embrace the fact that you will be alone, but not really alone if you have your emotional support system. So remember that. It can feel lonely, but because you went from having this relationship to having nothing in your mind. It feels like nothing. But the reality is that if you can't learn to be happy with yourself, and if you can't love yourself, how can you expect anybody else to do that for you? How can you expect somebody else to be happy with you or to love you if you can't do it for yourself? Because you can't even demonstrate it to them or teach them. So just embrace whatever decision you make. You have to embrace it and own it, whether you stay or you leave. Hi. Whether you stay or you leave, you have to embrace it. Just remember that toxic relationships are unhealthy. They do cause PTSD, which then causes extreme anxiety and depression. And so you have to decide how you want to live your life and whether or not it's worth being in that relationship or not. The best relationship you can have in this lifetime is with yourself. You can be your best friend, you can be your own cheerleader, you can be your own goal setter, you can accomplish anything you want in life. It is nice when we have a life partner, someone who is our cheerleader and someone who is very supportive and encouraging. But until we find that person, make sure that we just don't settle for anybody, just somebody who is going to give us a warm body during the winter. If you're here in the East Coast, because it's really cold right now, you have to be very careful. So the way you demonstrate true love to yourself is by choosing things that are healthy for you, including the person you're in a relationship with. So I only have 5 minutes left. I will not be doing an hour every single week, but I am going to get on every Sunday at 7 o'clock, including next Sunday. I will be live from my vacation, and I will be talking about traveling anxiety next Sunday. But do you have any questions? Hi, Hybrid Queen. Thank you. Yes, loving yourself is the most important thing in the world. So anybody have any questions or comments before I leave? Like I said, I will download this and put it on my YouTube channel, Real Talk with Kaisha. And tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., yes, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, I will be doing coffee time, morning message to set the tone for the week. So if you want to join me, 8 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow morning, I will be here. So if not, have a good evening, have a good Sunday, and hopefully this information was helpful to you, and talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.